Hey everybody, welcome to Crazy Tech Lab, and I've got a great video for you today because we are going to be checking out this bad boy here, which is the brand new NZXT H6 Flow RGB. This is the brand new dual chamber cube design from NZXT. It's very similar to the H9, except it's a compact design and it has quite a few different features to the H9 as well as being quite different to a lot of the other kind of wraparound glass panel cases that we've seen out there recently. So hopefully you can see here just what this case kind of looks like. Obviously, the key difference is we've got these angular fans. On the H9, they were planted right on the side panel. Here, it has a kind of cutaway and the fans are diagonally blowing air through into the case to help cool your hardware better, because obviously you don't really want the fans just kind of blowing straight into your case. It's going to create positive air pressure, but it's not directing the airflow at any particular components. Here though, it is basically pointing at your graphics card, and we've got some other interesting features as well. Down at the bottom of the case, we've got a kind of an opening where your fans can sit flush, so they can blow air straight up to your graphics card without kind of looking all unsightly stuck there in the middle of your case. We've got a dual chamber design here as well, so your power supply and hard disks and all those kind of things sit in the far side panel behind the motherboard and are hidden out of sight with some interesting cable routing there as well. So in terms of pricing, what have we got here? With the H6 Flow, the standard version, you get a standard version and the RGB version. We're looking at the RGB version today. The RGB version will cost you $135, or here in the UK, £120. The standard version without RGB lighting will set you back $109, $110 basically, and £100 on the dot. So it's going to be interesting to compare this case in terms of pricing, and we're going to be doing a full review of this case as well today. So we're not just building a pretty PC like a lot of people out there. We are going to be doing a full review to see if you should buy this case and whether it is worthy of your cash for your next upgrade. I'd like to thank NZXT for sending in the H6, and also don't forget to like and comment and subscribe to my channel as well. It means a lot to have your support, and I'll be looking at a lot more hardware over the next few weeks as well. So don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and if you do subscribe, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you are notified when I upload new videos. Today, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a full review of this case. We're going to be doing a full walk around interior and exterior to see what this case is all about. So let's crack on. Okay, so here we are with the H6 then, and what we're going to be doing is just going with a walk around the exterior, and then we're going to be going around the inside and building a PC into this very attractive looking case here. And just thought I'd crack out my turntable here because you don't really get a great view of the angles on this case unless you're rotating it. So for example, from here, you can't really tell that that section is angled that much. So just wanted to emphasize that. So one thing I really like about this case is that it is mainly tool free from the exterior. So apart from a couple of thumb screws, and you can undo these with your thumbs, you don't really need to crack out a screwdriver, everything just pops off. And you've got individual panels here for the roof, for this section here, for the side panels. Just very, very easy to work with. And here you get a great view of the dual chamber design. So ATX power supply on its side. Here you've got hard disk mounts in the base as well. Loads of space for your cables. It is pretty wide. It's a lot wider than your average ATX case. But then we've got the dual chamber design and a fairly compact cube design here as well. So in the rear, we've got a 120mm fan mount. Nothing else going on here in terms of cooling apart from this very large perforated mesh design. Now, something I will note is that the mesh that we've got here, if I just quickly pop this panel off again, very easy to remove these panels. You'll see here, hopefully you can see that that mesh design is super dense, and they are circular perforations, which is not the most efficient way to create a mesh in a metal panel. The most efficient way is to create hexagons. That's where you're going to get the most opening. And here you've just got a whole load of metal kind of sitting between those circles, and that just means that it's not very efficient. It can be quite restrictive. So it's going to be interesting to see just what the thermals are like in this case and whether things are potentially hampered in terms of airflow. And of course, we've got this perforation, the same design, same manufacturing process for all the panels on this case. We've got a big area here. We've got another section in the roof up here. And of course, you can see down here in the recessed fan mounts down here, there's more of that stuff down there. So Last thing we really need to concern ourselves with the exterior is the front panel, and we've got the power button, really nice touch to that there, quite solid. We've got two USB 3 ports and a Type-C full fat USB Type-C port down there, as well as an audio jack. So great if this case is on your desk, which it probably is going to be, but not that accessible if this case is going to be on the floor, because while it does have some fairly high case feet underneath here, that's not going to be enough to allow you to turn this PC on from if it's sitting on the floor. You're going to have to reach all the way down to reach that power button. So just something to bear in mind. So I have got some really interesting news about this case, because NZXT has massively undersold it in terms of the water cooling potential. So what we've got here is a case that claims to just be compatible with a 360mm radiator in the roof and a 120mm radiator in the rear. It can actually house a lot more than that. So that's what I'm going to check in with you guys first, just to let you know what is going on. So we're going to remove that panel again to remove the 3 included RGB fans that you get with the Flow RGB model. Slightly more expensive than the standard model. So that's the side panel that we removed earlier. Super easy, just uses all these pop-off panels, which is exactly what you get in most of the other panels as well. So I'm going to whip off all these panels here and we can start talking about the interior. So I'm just going to get all of these things off, and then I can rebalance my case on the turntable because it's feeling a little bit wobbly at the moment. And we'll remove this roof section as well. Super easy. And I wonder what this this front panel does. I think it's actually fixed in place from the looks of things, unless you remove this section up here. So it's not going to be impossible for someone to create like a distribution plate or something here. I think it is removable if you're okay to remove some screws, but other than that, you probably don't need to. Unfortunately, this section here looks like it is riveted in place up the top, so there's no funky removable radiator mount or removable roof section like we've seen in a few cases recently that just make building your PC a little bit easier. But then you do have this wonderful open space in here to work with. So looking at the inside then, the first things I want to mention are these 2 fan mounts here. So we've got the trio of fan mounts down here, 320mm fans included. Down the bottom, these mounts down here only support 140mm fans. So we'll start with this one, and I have some NZXT 144mm fans down here. I'll put a link to these in the description below. And these are the only size of fans that will fit down there. Obviously, all 140mm fans will fit down there, but you can't fit 120mm fans because there simply aren't the mounting points for them. But first bone of contention with the water cooling support and NZXT underselling this case is that once you mount these fans in like that, and don't they look cool? Recessed, that looks super cool. Once you've mounted them, there is nothing to stop you mounting a radiator on top. And just to prove that, I will just reach behind me here and grab a 280mm radiator. This is for a custom loop, but you could quite easily do a AIO liquid cooler as well. That could just sit on the top here. So here we've got our 280mm radiator. It's a Alpha Cool Slim radiator. And as you can see, well, it doesn't fit that way because it's fouling the I/O panel. But if we swing it around this way, that fits perfectly. So that is perfectly doable. You can swap the fans around so there is either exhausting into the case or exhausting through the base. So that's definitely one radiator that NZXT hasn't mentioned that you can actually mount in this case. Obviously, you can't fit the radiator directly into the fan mounts. There's not enough room down there, which is probably what NZXT is getting at. But if you're going with a custom loop or you want to fit an all-in-one liquid cooler, obviously the downside with an all-in-one liquid cooler is that the pump is going to be all the way up here and your radiator is going to be all the way down there, which isn't a great way to run things because the air can potentially get trapped in the pump. So probably not the best way to go with an AIO, but with a custom loop, absolutely. You know, you can fit a 360mm radiator in the roof up here in the fan mounts, and you can fit another radiator down there. So that's one option. So we'll get rid of all of these. I will see what impact these fans have on GPU cooling a bit later. And what we'll do now is crack open the 40mm radiators that we've got. So these fans, obviously 120mm radiators in the side. There's no way you're going to fit a 140mm radiator variant in there. But that is a 280mm radiator, folks, and that fits absolutely fine. I have tried it with screws. You won't be able to fit all the screws in because the fans go right the way down to the bottom. So what I actually found is I had to kind of raise the radiator up and just have the top mounts secured by the lower mounts in the top fan. But it does fit. It does actually fit there and is secured. So that is another option for liquid cooling, custom liquid cooling. You could, in theory, do the same with your AIO liquid cooler as well. But what you'd have to do is either remove the case fans that are included or ditch the fans that are included with your AIO, because you won't be able to fit another row of fans and another radiator plus these fans on the side panel. But if you're willing to have like a slightly haphazard approach with the radiator looking like so, and a bit of a gap underneath like that and a bit of a gap up top, totally doable, and you can massively increase the cooling expansion of this case. So you can fit a 280mm radiator in the base, and you can fit a 240mm radiator in the side, either with an AIO or a custom loop, with the proviso that you probably don't use the AIO in the bottom, because the radiator, essentially the reservoir, will be sitting at the bottom of the case, and the pump up here could potentially lead to air bubbles getting trapped in the pump over time. So some very interesting findings there with this case, and NZXT massively underselling it. So what we'll do now is just kind of swing things around. I think we've probably shown you the fan mounts up above. Not much more to say there. You've just got room for a 360mm radiator in the roof, and that is pretty much it. And actually, we should probably take a look at the base as well, just to show you guys quickly. And here we've got the large case feet. I love the angular one there, just to kind of stop the case rocking. They probably needed that. And here we've got the non-removable mesh down the bottom here. So you'll need to tip the case on its side like this to clean it, to hoover out any dust. So if we flip the case around now, we can see what we've got on the rear panel. And as I mentioned here, we've got some really interesting cable tidying going on here, because you've got this whole section here where you can just tie your cables off running from your power supply going up like this. You've got some cable routing holes going in here. You've got space for at least one hard disk, if not two, in there. I will double check that and put that on the screen now. I'm literally looking at this all afresh, as you guys are as well. Loads of more cable routing ties up here. They're all Velcro, so that's going to be super cool, super easy for tidying your cables. And we've got a few things tidied away here. We've got the accessory pack in this box here, which we'll get out in a second as we build the PC. Now you can remove this hard disk cage. I'm not sure why you'd want to. I mean, you could potentially put another radiator in the back here. But that is pretty much it from the inside of the NZXT H6. A very, very interesting case, and pretty undersold when it comes to water cooling support. Our test system includes a Be Quiet Shadow Rock 3 cooler with its fan at full speed, which in turn is cooling a stock speed Core i5 12600K processor. We also have an AMD Radeon RX 7900 XT, and its fans are locked at 50% to prevent them spinning up or down and altering the results. Moving on to the thermal results now then, and we have two entries for both the CPU temperature and GPU temperature. And the first one is just the NZXT H6 in its stock configuration, and then we also add two 140mm fans to the base of the case and one to the rear to hopefully aid cooling. And we see exactly that in the CPU temperature, which was obtained at the end of a 10-minute run in Cinebench's multi-threaded test. The CPU temperature fell by 2 degrees by adding those fans, and most of that is probably coming from adding the rear fan. So if you want to add a rear fan, you will probably see a small benefit if you're using an air cooler. And obviously, you probably won't see much of a benefit if your CPU is liquid cooled with an AIO liquid cooler in the roof of the case. I haven't got results for a liquid cooler here, because you will see different results depending on which liquid cooler you use, and there's only really one location that you'd want to fit a 360mm liquid cooler, and that's in the roof. So pretty much the results there, you're going to see different temperatures based on the CPU cooler that you use. So if we move on to the GPU temperature, this is where things got a little weird because the NZXT H6 out of the box, pretty good GPU temperature. It was cooler than the Masterbox TD500 Mesh V2, but it was a couple of degrees warmer than all the iterations of the Be Quiet Darkbase Pro 901. Now, the weird thing happened when I added those fans again, the two lower fans drawing air into the case and blowing it directly towards the graphics card, and a rear fan exhausting out of the case. The GPU temperature rose by 3 degrees. Now, I thought that this was just some, something happened and I'd not left enough time between benchmarks and the second run was just a lot warmer. No, I reran this test 4 times and reversed it, so I carried out the result with the lower fan, with the extra fans first, left the case for 10 minutes to cool down, and then I reran the test without those fans. The temperature was always lower in the stock configuration. Now, we're using Radeon RX 7900 XT here. Has a very kind of standard old-fashioned cooling layout with most of the air being exhausted out of the sides of the graphics cards, and it has 3 fans on the top. Now, I can only assume that the lower fans are either not working that well with that kind of cooling arrangement, or they are interfering with the angled front fans in the NZXT H6, which after all are not a standard arrangement at all. In fact, some of them I would have thought that they'd be kind of blowing towards the exhaust fans on the graphics card, and potentially impacting on thermals that way. But as I say, I can't really account for this temperature difference when you add fans. In pretty much every other situation, I would expect the graphics card to get cooler here. But bearing in mind that I've locked the fans on the graphics card to 50%, and I've run that in that same test in all these cases, if there was anything going on with the boosting, perhaps the boosting was going higher because of the lower GPU temperatures, and it was momentarily going to a higher GPU temperature before falling back down. After all, I'm only recording the highest recorded temperature here. We would have seen the same on the Be Quiet Darkbase Pro 901 because that had even cooler GPU temperatures and it didn't rise anywhere near 70 degrees. So just something a bit weird going on here. I'm not entirely sure what it is. I've discounted as much stuff as I can do without making the tests not particularly real world. So all I can say is that it will probably vary depending on the GPU that you have. An RTX card from NVIDIA with a flow-through fan design might benefit more from this setup. But if you're running an AMD graphics card or something that has a more traditional kind of draw air in, shove it out the side kind of arrangement, just be aware if you're adding fans into the lower fan mounts that you might see slightly higher GPU temperatures. So I thought it'd be fun to run through a few things that I love and I hate about this case. So starting off then, the NZXT H6 looks absolutely fantastic. I love these panoramic glass panels and the seamless join here and the angles that this case has got going on. Yes, other cases out there are following a similar design, but I just like the design of this one with the side fans as well. We also have the very, very easy to work with design of this case. You've got these panels that just pop off like so, and we've got the roof section, which again just pops off. You've got a whole bunch of stuff up here with the radiator mount and that kind of thing. Just very, very easy to work with. Another thing I love about this case, if we open up this side panel, is we have this flush area down here for mounting 140mm fans. And if we put one of these NZXT F140 RGB core fans in here, you will see just how incredible that looks when it's sitting in the bottom of the case. It's flush, it's not sticking up, you're not seeing the side of the fan. I just think that's a really, really cool design. Moving on to the rear panel now, and we have an incredible area to work with in here in terms of cable tidying. We've got loads of Velcro straps and all those kind of things. We've got the hard disk mount here, which is removable. Just a really, really great way of organizing a case and hiding those cables. Now, moving on to the things that I'm not so keen on with this case, and we have the fan cable here, which runs off, and that's daisy chained to all the other fans. Now, the problem with that is that it's already kind of tied up. And that is the extent to which you've actually got to work with when you are trying to connect it with your motherboard. That's literally just 2 or 3 inches of cable there. And I would have much rather have seen an extension cable included in the box, so you could just leave this all tidied up and then run this to whatever fan header you want on your motherboard. Instead, you've got to detach all of this here, and you've got to try and find a way of running that cable round to your motherboard, probably underneath down here or something in one of the cable routing holes, and trying to find a connector on your motherboard. That cable should have been longer, or an extension cable could have been provided. Something else that I'm not too keen on is the hard disk cage. Now this is removable just by lifting it up and pulling it out. The first issue I had was that you had to remove this to actually get the accessory tray out. If that's in there and you're trying to put it out, basically you can't get it out. It's kind of stuck, so you have to remove that hard disk tray to get it out. The other issue I have is that there's only space for 1 hard disk in here, and given the abundance of space in this area, I mean, NZXT could have done like a vertical arrangement with 2 of these in the bottom, or it could have just, you know, opened up that space and allowed a little more to be going on in there. I know it's got the 2.5-inch SSD mounts, but I'd much rather see more space for hard disks inside this case, given that they are still pretty popular for those of us that need mass storage. Something else I wasn't too keen on, or at least I would have liked to have seen with this case, is in the roof section. Now, as you can see up here, we've got the radiator mount, but none of this is removable. It's all fixed in place, and I just kind of would have preferred if this area could have been lifted out so you can mount your radiators to it. I don't think it would have been too difficult to do it, because there's just a few rivets around here that could have been turned into screw sections, and it would just been a nice touch. Even if it was just the radiator mount up here that was removable, I would have liked to have seen that as a feature. Finally, the one last thing I'm not too keen on with this case is the fact that you don't get 120mm fan mounts in the base of the case. I can appreciate that that cutout is designed to look great with 140mm fans, which really fill it up. But if you already have fans that you want to use into this case to transplant into it to save money and not having to go out and spend $30, $40, $50 on a new set of 140mm fans, you are out of luck, because that bottom mount only allows for 140mm fans to be installed. So that's a little bit of a shame. So what do we make of the NZXT H6 then? Well, I have to admit that I absolutely love this case. It looks fantastic from pretty much every angle. NZXT has clearly put a lot of thought into the aesthetics of this case, even if it is fairly similar to a lot of other cases out there at the moment. We've got these super flush fan mounts here. We've got plenty of room for your hardware inside, and the company has really undersold it as far as water cooling potential goes, specifically with radiator mounts. There's plenty more radiator mounts in here than the specifications say, so if you're thinking of building a custom loop in this case, basically, the world is your oyster. You've got loads of options when it comes to liquid cooling in this case as well. I also love the cable routing and just the overall design of this thing. I think it looks absolutely great, and there are lots of thoughtful things such as the tool-free panels and all that kind of stuff, just making it a very, very easy case to work with. There are some downsides though, such as these lower fans. For some reason, they impact on GPU thermals only by a couple of degrees, but if you're thinking of dropping some fans in there, just bear in mind that with a traditional graphics card, with air going in and being blown out the sides, you might see slightly higher thermals using the fans in the base for some reason, which I couldn't get to the bottom to, as I mentioned earlier in the video. We also don't have a removable roof section. I think that would have just been a nice sweetener just to make installing radiators and fans in the roof that little bit easier. And I would have also liked to have seen a couple of extra extension cables for the RGB lighting and the PWM fans, which are pre-installed. They are daisy chained, but there's just this tiny slither of cable that's left to run through to your motherboard. Other than that, I like it as long as you're not looking to drop in loads and loads of storage. It's reasonable, but there is only space for one 3.5-inch hard disk in here, which isn't great given the volume of the case, and there's plenty of opportunity for NZXT to have added a few extra 3.5-inch mounts in here. So overall though, I think it's great. It's a great case for the money. I would have no problem using this myself. In fact, I probably will at some point in future if I can tear myself away from Mini ITX for a few months. But this is a great looking case. It's very good value for money, loads of features, and it looks absolutely fantastic as well. So I'd like to thank NZXT for sending it over, and you can see all the hardware that I've featured today in today's video in the description below, so don't forget to check out those buy links and affiliate links. They always just chip in and help me run this channel. So thanks to NZXT, thanks to you guys for watching, and don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and we will be back soon.